Hi, I'm Stacie Smith, and I'm a psychotherapist in Decatur, Georgia. I'm here today to talk about the intergenerational transmission of war trauma, and most specifically, healing. When I think about war, and I think about it, from in the context of maybe like dark forces being unleashed upon a people or peoples, and that the people that are victims in that experience taking on the dark force that's unleashed, and then they also have their own response to it, and it's usually a survival response. And the interesting and intense and painful thing about traumatic response is that it just doesn't happen once. It actually ends up replaying in oneself over and over and over again. And so when I think about how that kind of thing gets transmitted from one generation to the next, it's not very hard for me to imagine that being the case, because what we know is if let's say you have a mom and she is carrying a baby inside of her and she's going through something really scary in her life, that this baby is forming in fear, in the fear of her womb. And then the child comes out into the world, and children and their very young brains are very socially attuned. So without any verbal communication, a little one is not only picking up on all those things that the adults are operating on top of, but they don't have a boundary from that experience. So they feel it all and often take it to be themselves. And then eventually, as their meaning-making part of their brain comes online, they might make some very important decisions about themselves and about other people and about the world based on what it feels like inside of them. So if I lived with people, and my main caregiver had a really hard time being present in the world because of what she had survived and as a defense, as a strategy, learned to live on top of, if that is who was mirroring back to me, and if that is who my nervous system was forming its rhythms or lack of rhythms based on hers, it's no wonder these energetic, anxiety, traumatic patterns easily get formed within children. And it's at these crucial times when the child's brain is forming that not only is the energy patterning, the trauma getting recreated, but it's also setting up a template for life, for the rest of this person's life, for their behaviors, for their mind-body patterns, for their ability to connect with other human beings, for their ability to regulate internal chaos. All these things are being set up for the rest of their life. I'd like to offer some suggestions if you find yourself recognizing that you are living with transmitted war trauma. The first thing that is important is, once you put a name on it, that you really acknowledge and validate that this is something really real. And it might be important to have a couple of, to identify some core people in your life that you can be honest about what you're experiencing. I would highly suggest getting into therapy. And it's really important who you get into therapy with, just in terms of making a good connection. You may want to ask the therapist some questions before you get into therapy with them, like what they know about intergenerational trauma. And maybe they might be able to tell you if they work with some of the mindfulness practices that help somebody learn how to regulate themselves, their nervous system, and develop some capacities that living with dissociation or split-offness has deprived them of enjoying in this life. I I would highly suggest finding a practice like yoga or Tai Chi. There just seems to be something really important about this re-regulation of the nervous system, or maybe even regulating the nervous system for the first time. The body needs to be able to find homeostasis by itself, and when there's been some kind of disruption in the generational line, the body might not know how to do that by itself. And these practices just offer like profound insight and depthful awareness, but some really concrete things on the regulation of the nervous system, finding rhythm in the body, the ability to use your breath to change your experience. These things just feel very crucial. I think talk therapy is really important when you're dealing with trauma, but at the same time, these energetic patternings of trauma are so deep, and they're really on a cellular level. So you need a practice. You need something that maybe you show up to once a week that's going to help the patterning change that deep inside of you.